She doesn't know why she keeps ruining everything right before it gets good. It's always the same pattern. A week before something important, a job interview, a date, a family event, she starts to spiral. She snaps at people. She avoids calls. She isolates. She cries in the shower. She cancels plans with vague excuses. She sabotages good things. She lashes out and then regrets it. And then, the bleeding starts. And just like that, she feels herself again. Clear, light, normal. As if the person she was a few days ago had never existed. But she did exist. And she left a trail of damage behind. This is the part no one talks about. Not the cramps. Not the bloating. But the emotional destruction. The way her world feels like it's collapsing in on itself every 28 days. The way she starts to hate everyone and then herself. The way she spirals into deep self-loathing, convinced she's broken, unlovable, unstable. She has tried everything. Yoga, meditation, journaling, supplements, therapy, prayer. And still, like clockwork, the darkness comes. Some months it's manageable. Other months it feels like she's drowning in a sea of rage, grief, confusion, and guilt. She wonders if she's bipolar. Or if she has a personality disorder. Or maybe she's just too dramatic. She's learned to hide it well. Smile at work. Say just tired. Blame stress. But deep down, she knows something is wrong. Something more than just PMS. And the scariest part? No one sees it. She doesn't tell her friends. She's afraid they'll think she's exaggerating. She doesn't tell her partner. She's afraid he'll leave. She doesn't tell her family. They'll just say, "Welcome to womanhood." So she swallows it, carries it, alone. Until one day, by accident, she stumbles on a phrase she's never heard before. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder. PMDD. At first, she thinks it's just a more intense form of PMS. But as she reads the symptoms, her heart starts to race. It's like someone wrote her diary. The mood swings, the rage, the paranoia, the crying spells, the disconnection, the urge to quit everything and run away, the sudden relief once her period begins. It's all there, in black and white. And for the first time in years, she cries not from pain, but from recognition. She's not crazy. She's not unstable. She's not broken. She's hormonal, neurologically sensitive, living inside a cycle that hijacks her brain chemistry every single month. No one told her this. Not in health class. Not at the doctor's office. Not in therapy. Because no one talks about it. Because it sounds like an excuse. Because period problems aren't taken seriously. But PMDD is real. And for 1 in 20 women, it's debilitating. It's not about being moody. It's not about overreacting. It's a full-body emotional collapse triggered by hormonal sensitivity in the brain. And now that she knows, she can stop blaming herself. She can stop apologizing for existing. She can finally begin the work of healing. Not from weakness, but from silence. And maybe, just maybe, she can start to believe that her life doesn't have to fall apart every 28 days. Maybe the spiral isn't a flaw. Maybe it's a signal. And maybe, with the right tools, she can learn how to listen to it. Instead of being destroyed by it. The spiral wasn't random. It was biochemical. The week before her period, her brain becomes a battlefield. And no one ever taught her how to fight on it. To understand PMDD, you have to understand the sensitivity. This isn't about low estrogen or high progesterone. It's about how her brain responds to normal hormonal changes. Most women have fluctuations. But in women with PMDD, those fluctuations trigger neuroinflammation, a storm in the brain. Imagine your nervous system trying to walk a tightrope during an earthquake. That's PMDD. The amygdala, responsible for fear, anger, emotional response, becomes hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that helps you think clearly, solve problems, regulate emotions, starts to dim. Logic fades, emotions intensify, and the result? An entire personality shift. But not permanent, cyclical. Every month, like clockwork. She doesn't just feel sad, she feels worthless. She doesn't just feel irritated, she feels enraged. She doesn't just feel anxious, she feels doomed. And the worst part? The moment it passes, she doubts it even happened. That's what makes it so cruel. Because PMDD lives in the shadows of her memory. It makes her question her own sanity. It convinces her that her pain was exaggerated, that her reaction was overblown. She tells herself, I should be stronger than this. But it's not about strength. It's about neurobiology. PMDD is often called a neuroendocrine disorder. That means it lives at the intersection of hormones and brain chemistry. Her serotonin levels fluctuate. Her GABA receptors respond erratically. Her ability to regulate mood collapses. And yet, she still has to go to work. She still has to be a mother. She still has to show up for her life like nothing is happening inside. Because the world doesn't stop for a hormonal war. No one sees the damage. No one brings soup or flowers. No one says, take a few days to rest. Because she's not bleeding from the outside. She's bleeding emotionally, internally, and invisible wounds rarely get acknowledged. So she gaslights herself. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe I just need more discipline. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. But here's the truth. PMDD is not a character flaw. It's a nervous system flare. It's the brain's response to an internal shift it wasn't designed to tolerate quietly. And when that shift hits, it doesn't matter how much she meditates. It doesn't matter how many gratitude journals she fills. It doesn't matter how much she loves her kids, her partner, her life. The spiral comes anyway. And it tells her lies. You're not enough. You're a burden. You ruin everything. No one would miss you. And these lies feel like truth because the brain chemistry is imbalanced. Not forever. Not always. But enough to shake her. Enough to make her question her worth. Enough to make her withdraw. Enough to make her consider disappearing. And that's why PMDD is so dangerous. Because it mimics mental illness. It mimics depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder. But it's hormonal. It's cyclical. It's invisible. And it's devastating when misunderstood. Now imagine being told your whole life that this is just what being a woman is. Imagine carrying that pain in silence for decades. Imagine passing it on to your daughters without even realizing it. That's why this story matters. Because the moment you name the pattern, you change the ending. The moment you understand it's PMDD. Not weakness, not overreaction, not failure. You take back your narrative. And with that shift, a new door opens. A door to self-compassion. A door to better planning. A door to real treatment. A door to not hating yourself once a month. The brain isn't broken. It's overwhelmed. And now that you know, you can finally begin to care for it the way it needs. It starts with one question. What if this isn't just me being unstable? That question cracks something open. She begins to track her days. Not just with red X's on a calendar, but with detail. She writes down when the fog begins. When the anger rises. When the hopelessness creeps in. And when, without warning, it lifts, and for the first time, she sees it. The pattern, the rhythm, the cycle that's been there all along. It's not random. It's not chaos. It's biochemical choreography. And in that realization, she finds a small kind of power. Because if she can name it, she can begin to work with it. So she starts experimenting. She plans her hardest conversations in her safe weeks. She schedules her rest days during the spiral. She tells close friends, "Don't take it personally this week, I'm in the deep part." Some understand, some don't, but she understands. And that's new. She no longer wakes up confused. She wakes up prepared. She doesn't fight the fog, she makes space for it. She creates what she calls her PMDD sanctuary, a box with soft socks, lavender oil, notes to herself from clear days, and playlists that hold her without demanding anything. She redefines productivity. Some days, surviving is enough. Some weeks, resting is the win. And little by little, she unhooks her worth from her ability to be consistent. She lets herself be cyclical. Because she is. We all are. But the world isn't designed for cyclical beings. It rewards linear progress, predictable output, stability, and PMDD laughs in the face of stability. But now she's laughing back. Not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer erases her. She remembers who she is, even in the spiral. She makes post-spiral checklists. Call your sister back. It's okay, you didn't ruin everything. You were in the tunnel. You're out now. She writes love letters to herself in her good weeks, to be read during the bad ones. She trains her brain to expect the darkness, and to meet it without fear. And the more she tracks, the more she learns. She learns her triggers. Late nights, conflict, too much caffeine, overcommitting. She learns her soothers. Early walks, Epsom salt baths, fewer screens, more boundaries. She learns to speak her truth faster. I'm in my drop. I need less talking, more quiet. I love you, but I can't people today. This doesn't make her weak. It makes her wise. She becomes her own translator, her own anchor. And that kind of self-awareness? It's revolutionary. Because women with PMD have been called dramatic, crazy, hormonal messes. When in fact, they are emotional athletes. They navigate cognitive distortions, identity erosion, and biochemical ambushes. And still manage to raise kids, hold jobs, make meals, and show up. That is not weakness. That is a superpower. But even superpowers need rest, need help, need permission. And now that she understands her pattern, she can give herself all three. She creates systems, color-coded calendars, PMDD prep weeks, text templates for canceling with kindness, foods that ground her, clothes that soothe her, people who hold her without fixing her. This is not about curing it. It's about caring for it. This is how she reclaims her cycle. Not by conquering it, but by learning its language. And every month, she speaks it more fluently. Before she had a name for it, she thought it was all her fault. The relationships that crumbled, the projects she abandoned, the friendships she distanced herself from. Every time she spiraled, she believed she was simply too much. Too emotional, too unstable, too unpredictable. She became an expert at apologies. I'm sorry I overreacted. I'm sorry I canceled again. I'm sorry I wasn't myself. But which version of her was the real one? The vibrant, laughing woman full of plans and love? Or the withdrawn, irritable shadow who pushes people away? This split began to eat her identity. She stopped trusting herself, stopped planning trips, stopped saying yes to commitments, because she didn't know who would show up in a week. She started seeing herself through the eyes of others. The confusion, the frustration, the disappointment, and little by little she shrunk. She stopped dreaming, stopped reaching out, stopped expecting good things. Because every time life started to flow, the crash came. It wasn't just emotional, it was existential. She began to believe she was unworthy of stability, of love, of understanding. Partners called her difficult. Coworkers labeled her moody. Even therapists sometimes missed it, focusing on childhood, trauma, stress, but never asking about her cycle. And so she internalized the blame. Her body became the enemy, her hormones, the saboteurs, her emotions, a liability. And in that silence, she lost years. Years of potential, of connection, of peace. This is what PMDD steals. Not just time, but trust. Trust in the body. Trust in the brain. Trust in love. Because when you're told, over and over, that you're just too sensitive, you begin to armor up. She became hyper-independent, afraid to lean on anyone, afraid to be seen in a spiral. She avoided intimacy. What if someone got too close and saw her collapse? What if they didn't stay? So she built walls. Pretty, functional, polite walls. And behind them, she disappeared. This is why so many women with PMDD feel lonely. Not because they lack people, but because no one truly knows what they're surviving. It's a monthly descent into darkness, without a rope, without a witness. And when they reemerge, they smile, they pretend, they overcompensate, because society rewards the bounce back, not the breakdown. But healing can't happen in hiding. That's why naming it is radical. It breaks the shame loop. It says, this is not a flaw. This is a condition. This is not your fault. This is your pattern. This is not who you are. This is what you're moving through. And when she begins to say that out loud, things shift. Her friendships deepen. Not because she's always stable, but because she's honest. Her partner begins to understand. Not everything, but enough to stay present. She finds online communities of women who speak her language, who say things like, I'm in my tunnel. My brain is lying to me today. I'm tracking day 23, be gentle. And suddenly, she's not alone. She's not broken. She's part of something. A quiet revolution of women reclaiming their cycles, not with shame, but with science, with support, with sacred timing. Because once you name the pattern, you can choose your response. And every time she honors her cycle, every time she gives herself permission to be cyclical in a world that demands consistency, she heals a part of the wound of being misunderstood. The wound of self-blame, the wound of being too much. She is not too much. She is just finally enough for herself. She no longer sees herself as broken. She sees herself as someone who has survived storms, monthly hurricanes, without an umbrella, without a forecast, and still, she's here. Every time she spiraled, every time she thought it would swallow her whole, every time she questioned her worth, she still came back. And that matters. Because not everyone knows what it's like to fall apart on schedule. To rebuild a life in the small windows between collapses. To smile through the warning signs because the world keeps turning. But she does. And now, with a name, PMD, she can stop seeing herself as unstable and start seeing herself as sensitive to the sacred timing of her biology. She's not less. She's just wired differently. And instead of fearing it, she's learning to honor it. She creates a rhythm around her rhythm. She builds a life with more softness. She protects her spiral weeks with boundaries no one sees, but that save her every time. She stops comparing herself to others. Their calendars are not her calendar. Their energy is not her energy. Their path is not her path. And in that acceptance, she finds freedom. She still has hard days, still loses her footing, still wakes up sometimes and forgets who she is. But now, she has reminders, notes on her mirror. You're not broken, you're cycling. You've been here before. You survived. This feeling has a finish line. She records voice memos to her future self, so she never forgets the truth when the lies get loud. And little by little, the shame fades. She no longer hides the spiral. She prepares for it. She no longer apologizes for her cycle. She educates those around her. She no longer fears losing everything again, because now she has tools, and language, and self-trust. That's the real healing. Not perfect cycles, not total control, but radical awareness. Awareness that says, my brain is lying to me today. I'm not making big decisions. I feel rage. I'm going to sit with it, not act from it. I want to disappear, which means I need more rest, not more guilt. She starts sharing her truth with other women. And the most powerful thing happens. They start crying. Because they thought they were the only ones. Because they thought they were dramatic, lazy, weak. Because no one ever gave them permission to feel this much without shame. And now they know. They know there's a name. They know there's a pattern. They know there's a way through. Maybe not easy. Maybe not linear. But real. And so a new generation of women begins to rise. Cyclical, powerful, and unapologetic. Women who cancel plans without guilt. Who track their cycles like sacred maps. Who build rest into their calendars. Who say no without needing a crisis to justify it. Women who no longer punish themselves for not being machines. Women who acclaim softness as strength. Because they've been to the depths. And they returned with wisdom. And in that wisdom, there's space for everything. For tears. For rage. For silence. For laughter. For stillness. For truth. Especially truth. Because that's what heals the most. Not more doing. Not more fixing. But saying, this is what it's like to be me. And I'm not ashamed anymore. That is liberation. That is medicine. That is the beginning of a life no longer built on survival, but on deep, radical care. For the cycle. For the nervous system. For the self. And as the next spiral approaches, she doesn't panic. She prepares. Because she's not afraid anymore. She's aware. And that, more than anything, is how she finally wins. It's not about avoiding the storm. It's about becoming the kind of woman who knows how to stand in the middle of it and still remember the sun will rise. And it always does.